Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, good
Happy
morning.
Wednesday.
Welcome back to the Buy Here, Pay Here Morning Show.
Yes, and it is White Hat Wednesday.
That's right.
It is, and I'm excited to kind of get into this topic.
Yeah.
First, we always have announcements, and right now it's the deal structure, which is August 1st, and tickets are available.
Tons of data coming in. Some of it's going to come in later than I had hoped, and so we'll be scrambling to bring it all together. But
it's going to happen. It'll be good.
Yeah, there's a ton of data already. So looking forward to that. And good interest. It'll be a rich day.
Yeah.
And so you folks just don't wait too late to register.
Right.
Let's get you in there.
You're right. And so it'll be Jim and Mr. Chuck Bonanno, who who is very well known in the industry. He's right now the executive director of FIADA in Florida, and then also Brent Carmichael, who is one of the head moderators for NCM, and he handles all their buy here, pay here. And he's been doing it so long that Jim was one of his clients. He was in one of his 20 groups for NCM quite a while ago. So two really well-versed, educated people besides Jim that will be there to
and we're going to talk about numbers and try to share the numbers and not so much, have anybody tell anybody what they should do as much as here's what the numbers say. Now do with it what you will, right? So
math doesn't lie a lot of times. So,
that's right.
Or most,
And so we have to just get transparent with what the numbers are and let dealers see as much as they can see and let them draw their own conclusions.
And move forward with what they're comfortable with.
Yeah. So it'll be a lot about underwriting that day. So look forward to having some of you in there.
So today's White Hat Wednesday. Do we have anything else we need to talk about before we get into the topic?
No, just a lot of activity around our September event. It could be that we're down to one seat by the end of this week. So, obviously they could all be gone. So
if you're interested,
in that,
let us know. That's going to be,
seats are going to get
it's going to be pretty,
just 4.
Pretty, that will be an impactful 3 days.
Yeah. And so our new CEO, Jerry Martinez, will also be part of the coaching faculty there. So you'll hear more about his particular background soon.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So today we're diving into a big subject. We just kind of already declared, like yesterday, we just kind of had a sudden awareness that this was a place that we needed to go and kind of go in a big way and bring a lot of people to the conversation going forward. For today.
Yes. We're going to kind of give you an overview about what it is, what it means, where we're going to go,
why we think it matters.
And
this week we've seen evidence like time after time.
Yeah.
And I shared with Michelle, like, if I just look at the last 3 business days, like starting Friday,
and we were sick Saturday, Sunday, but Friday.
We were so sick this weekend.
It was Friday, Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Pretty impactful interactions with
amazing
dealers and colleagues that had a theme running through.
Yeah. And I think, you can make the case that this is always part of a lot of our business conversations. But I think with these recent conversations, it's just been so front and center. It's been so apparent across so many of these conversations that it's like we really should address. And this is not really about Jim and Michelle. It's because of the interactions that we've had this week that you see the impact and the benefit of establishing a degree of trust. So for me, what that kind of looks like when I think about, how do I hope that dealers in our segment?
Because what we're talking about is trust in business, trust between a business and a customer, trust between a business and a business, but it's about trust in that kind of world, that kind of realm.
Yeah. And so I think when I look at the thing and just kind of examine it, I know that, we were advised by our coach some time ago this idea of becoming known, liked, and
You've
trusted.
heard
And
us
that's
say it.
kind of in a marketing
Yeah.
track. Like that's about
Yeah.
connecting with consumers or connecting with your would-be customer, client, whatever, is get to the place where you're known, liked, and trusted. So for me, the way I think about that for you and I is I hope that we've spoken enough to enough people in enough places, and we say it privately, the same thing we say publicly, which is that people can hopefully reach the point where they trust when we say that we really are interested in the success of dealers and ultimately their consumers too. That we hope that people get to the place where they just trust that we're genuine and authentic in that. But again, today's not so much about us, but it's just like now you realize, okay, so what is like, how do we view trust? And so I asked the question, for example, and I think this conversation really can, it matters beyond our buy here payer segment. Obviously, you and I spend our days working inside the buy here payer industry. So a subset of the automotive space, subset of the finance sector of automotive. And that's a segment that is often viewed as predatory, right?
Untrustworthy.
Yeah, the word unscrupulous car dealers. Have been movies made. I mean, there's a perception of the used car industry, and so we're aware. We're keenly aware of the image and what some people in the political arena would call optics. Like we're aware of the optics, and so for me, that starts to become, a difference between what we say and what we do. And that's can be as dealers, but that can be for any of us as vendors and providers in the space is it's what you say and what you do. Do they align? Are you consistently doing what you say is important to you? And so that's where, and I think this is when I look at this from the vendor perspective as a former dealer myself, and as having been to these conferences and kind of looking through the dealer's eyes, I'm thinking, dealers are smarter than they sometimes seem to get credit for being. Right. And I think they see things and so they form their own opinions about, what and whom they trust. And so it's been an interesting evolution, as we've kind of watched that to see, because I think for today, we want to really talk about what does form whatever. Let's pick a dealer in, Middleville, Indiana. How does that person go about forming trust?
Yeah. I want to, before we kind of go into some of the notes that we have, just let you all know that this is season 1, episode 1 of, we're going to be talking about this in White Hat Way about trust, truth about trust. That will be the series name, Truth About Trust. And throughout the series, we're going to be bringing people in that we'll be talking about whether or not they're trusted by their consumers, what it is that they've done that's helped to create that level of trust, businesses that they work with that they trust, what created that level of trust with them. And so we're gonna be getting a lot of real life examples and other things that we can bring into the conversation, because it really occurred to us yesterday how important this topic is. And this is like human topic. This is a human topic about trust. And we're going to be encapsulating it in the business world. But trust is something that it really navigates us through our day. In all of our interactions, who we choose to interact with, who we choose not to interact with, all of those things, who we choose to do business with, who we choose not to do business with. It's who we feel like we want to engage with in an alley as you're walking towards a store or something. There's trust is a thing that we see that is there's a just inhumaning in society, all of that trust is something that there's a lack of in a lot of ways, but we're just talking about, we're going to start in our encapsulated in business and knowing that we work in an industry that has a high level of distrust.
Right.
That level of distrust is from, like Jim said, the optics looking in and that there's a high level of distrust from the business owner looking out in a lot of ways. And so, we really wanted to just kind of dive in about what are the things that trust, what is trust about, and how, when it's lost, and how it's earned, and should it just be given, and all those kind of things. So
yeah, so I wanted to, for today, it was mostly about framing the conversation. And I told Michelle, look, there's so much to talk about here. We try to keep it typically to 30 minutes. We might run a little long today because there's just a lot to kind of introduce. But I think going forward on this subject, you can expect us to bring speakers from outside and get their perspective on the thing. But we think it's a really relevant topic for the used car industry. And we know that, what we'll talk about here will apply to other industries, but certainly it's thinking about creating some level of trust. And for us, there's a marketing element to that. How do we connect with the consumers? How do we get the consumer to get to trust us? Because we did a poll. I went back and looked up the results from a poll we did in February. So I did it in two buy here, pay here groups at least. I found the results in two groups. One was it's a real success in the car biz, which is going to have some independence and some buy here, pay here. And we had 80 respondents.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the poll was, in fact, I can read the question. Let me just get the phrasing right. Does being trusted as a dealer translate into more sales? Yes or no? So simple question. Does being trusted as a dealer translate into more sales? And in the buy here, pay here group, the buy here, pay here success group, 96 out of 97 said, yes, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty,
it's
and
like a predominant.
The other group that also includes independent retail dealers who are not buy here, pay here. We had 80 respondents on the poll in that particular group, and 78 out of 80 said, yes, it does translate to sales. So we know that trust is, is going to be a thing. So yeah, George said something that I just talked about this morning. Trust is earned, distrust is earned, is what he said. It's like, there's and I think George is mostly talking about the used car industry and the perception of the used car industry. Some of that, folks out there create some level of distrust by their actions or their language or whatever. So we know that can happen. I think what we're really trying to identify today is like, how do we measure trust? Like, how do we gauge trust? How, and think about it for yourself. Like, what measuring stick do I use to make a determination? One of the things that came up is, in this, is the idea of becoming known, liked, and trusted. Is that a progression? Like, somebody first, you need to know them to be able to trust them, I think. But do you need to like them in order to be able to trust them? I think that's an interesting thing to explore as well. But either way, if you develop some level of trust, like, how does that happen? How do you come to trust somebody? So if you're tuned in here, you can throw your comments in there, but what happens?
I think that known and trusted are two really strong. I mean, they're the strong side of the elements of everything, of all of that. The liked part is like, oh yeah, I'll follow you kind of thing. It's like, I enjoy this person, I like this person, I know this person, and I trust this person. Now, I read this thing recently. I was telling you about it last night, that and it was completely came at a different time, before we'd even talked about this topic, where it was talking about how we oh my goodness, I need more. I lost it. It's gone.
Oh no.
Menopause.
It won't come back. You blame it on menopause? Okay.
It was about continue on, and I'll come back around to what
caffeine.
It was.
She
yes.
Caffeine, not
Trust
water
is crucial to everything. Yes, absolutely. That's from Shelley. Good morning, Shelley.
So yeah, I think that's been an interesting thing for me, is like, I've always kind of lumped trust in the same, as being in the same vein as respect.
Yeah.
And for me, respect is one of those things that you just earn. You don't show up, you don't walk in the room and meet somebody for the first time and have some degree of respect. You got to earn that somehow. You don't just show up and demand.
I remember
respect.
what it was.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So, you've got like two people that you work with intimately, and this might have been something that I read in Buy Here, Pay Here boardroom or something. I'm not sure. But it's like if you had two people, one that you worked with, and one that was like they told you as it was, a little bit hard to listen to, crass, whatever. They may not be the easiest person to listen to, but they get the job done. Do you trust them to get it done? For the most part, it's like, yeah, you're going to trust. You may not like them,
Mm-hmm.
but you trust that it's going to get done. And then there may be someone that you really like, but they make promises, they overpromise, they underdeliver things, all of that. You like them,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like, no, I really don't trust that this is going to get done the way that it should. So
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of an interesting way of looking at trust. Trust is something that people can look past liking someone
Right.
to experience trust.
Yeah. So this is among the things that we will examine. And
Mhm.
obviously in our used car industry, we'll dig into it. And I look forward to talking to vendors about this. We can talk to dealers about it. Heck, there are people that we kind of have in our circle, whether they're coaches or other, folks, because there are some coaches that we follow just on a social media
Mhm.
level that talk some about these things. And especially as it relates to leadership.
Mhm.
So, when we think about managing our own business and being leaders, because, leaders, being a good leader and being a good manager, they're not necessarily the same thing. We hope
Mhm.
that we can incorporate good leadership into our
Mhm.
managers, but really it's about how trust factors into good leadership. You guys are also going to get to know our new CEO, Jerry Martinez, who's done a lot of training in some really big corporate, environments. And so you're
And
going to enjoy hearing
yeah.
him talk about, leadership training and how he has developed his own leadership skills as somebody
Mhm.
who was, a commander of 50,000 plus, people.
I thought it was 100 and something thousand people, but
Maybe
yeah.
in that, yeah.
Mhm.
But it's like the idea is that when you're responsible for that and you need to affect, be an effective
Mhm.
leader in that. So how does that come into play?
Mhm.
But really, I think trust is going to be a big one, and so I think as we look at this, and obviously it's an anchor point for us in our White Hat Way teachings. Like when we think
Mhm.
about what is White Hat Way, we think we have to get to this place where people can trust that our word is good, that it
Mhm.
means something. And we have to establish that, I think. So kind of what George is talking about is the
Yeah.
thing about if it's got to be earned and it can be lost, we know that thing about once we lose trust in our community or with a
Mhm.
particular customer, how do we go about regaining that?
Because it is essential. It's essential to do business. People aren't going to do business with you, and you're not going to do business with others that you don't trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of the hard part, and one of the reasons why we don't have in our industry have such a great optic looking in, is because a lot of people don't have a choice,
Okay.
and they don't trust us.
Yeah.
They don't. They don't trust that it's. They just don't trust that you have their best interest at heart.
Yeah. And I would also ask, you used the word heart. Like I'm
Ah.
interested. Yeah. So it's like I'm interested in the piece about, and I asked the question out on LinkedIn just this morning, and I look forward to sharing it on
There's
another
not a lot of
social.
answers, but it's just kind of is interesting to
Yeah.
me.
Well, it's a late deal, and we don't,
Mhm.
LinkedIn as a business platform, there are very few dealers over
Yeah.
on LinkedIn, but really we're just asking the question, do we think of trust as being a matter of the head or is it a matter of the heart? Because when you use the word heart just now, I'm thinking, when you say, is somebody's heart in the right place?
Mhm.
If their heart is, what do you mean by that? If you say we think their heart is in the right place.
They have very good intentions to get this done or to
Okay.
do the thing or to
Does that mean that you feel like you can trust their intentions?
yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty good place to start, right?
Mhm.
So now we move into the action side of it, but
Mhm.
it's
There
like,
there really are heart and head. There's straight and squiggly lines to this
I
question
think
about
so
trust.
too. I think of
Mhm.
trust for me, I think of trust as more a matter of a heart.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I can be better trusted if people see that I'm coming from a heart place, like I really genuinely care about the success of the person that I'm working with. So whatever level that
Mhm.
is, if people can see I genuinely care, isn't that going to contribute to their level of trust in me? in terms
Well,
of,
let me ask you, and I think about Mr. Brandis, and I've said so many times that I really appreciate how he tells story. And he tells the story every time something is sold or every time someone gets a referral or a payoff, whatever. He takes a picture and he tells a story about the person. And that learning about someone, getting to know them, and knowing their heart, um, that helps Tommy step into trust too. And he talks about spiraling up or spiraling down. So it's like, their heart's in the right place and they're doing the stuff and they're doing the actions. They may have had bad actions in the past, but I'm going to trust this. I'm going to trust that their heart is in the right place and they're really trying. They're really working towards something better. That I think is a beautiful example to me of like in our business of, in order to get to the point where we trust someone's intentions, we have to ask questions. We have to understand more about them. We have to, because if you keep trust just on straight lines, well, they've had a repo. Okay, that's a straight line thing that it's like, all right, we're in an industry that people are going to have repos. They had a bankruptcy. Okay, there are people that have bankruptcies. And so are we going to tick them off because they have this and this? Or are we going to sit down and we're going to listen to them and, listen to what's happening in their world and why they landed here, because it matters. It matters. People want to feel like they are known. This is my situation. And I think that you kind of learn to navigate through. Sometimes it's like, this is a downward spiral story, this is an upward spiral story, kind of like what Tommy looks at is like, did they just lose their job? You might look at that a little bit differently. Did they just move out of their parents' house? That might be looked at a little bit differently. It's like, learn their story. Learn if you can trust, that.
I think this is an interesting line to talk about,
Mhm.
especially in the context of trust, because as I hear you talk about that, I hear the attorneys over there squirming from a compliance standpoint. Like, that's
Mm.
not objective. And they're asking
Hmm.
us at the CFPB level and with our underwriting to be more objective and be more consistent in our decision making. So what you're doing there is and it's fine. Like, I think it's what dealers do, frankly. They're looking at whatever information they need to trust their gut. And I think at the end of the day, they're the business owners. They're the ones it's their money they're putting on the line. So I think it's an interesting thing to navigate in the years to come. And in terms of course, we're advocating for dealers to be compliant, be compliant. I think it's also interesting in the buy here, pay here space. Like, that's the part that you have to navigate, that subjectivity, objectivity. And we're
Mhm.
trying to get to the place where we can have some level of trust in this customer that we're about to finance, even though their credit report indicates they haven't shown a lot of financial responsibility in the past, but they're asking me to provide them financing. I want to help. I
Mhm.
have to develop some level of trust here. And by the way, the trust goes both ways for the customer and the dealer. We got to, that's the way, in my way, trust works. Like, if it can't be one-sided for too long, or that doesn't work. So it's an interesting thing to try to figure out. And I use the word compliance, and here comes Tyler Simmons. So yeah, so I didn't read it.
When the heart is in the right place, the communication is open and honest. That can be true now, even if other things reflect that this is not the case in the past.
Yeah,
So,
so that's kind of touching on the thing about, reestablishing trust, even though maybe we lost it or there hasn't been true in the
mhm.
past. And that's absolutely true. And I think, people say it and it gets a little cliche in our industry. The idea people put on their business cards, we care more about your future than your past. Well, that's easy to say. Our tendency sometimes to distrust based on what we see in a credit report or the application about the background, right, of the customer
Mhm.
that sits before us. But I think it's, like I say, that's a tricky one, and it'll be a fun one to explore as we move forward here. This subjectivity, objectivity line, and how much can we, bring gut and trust into that's another thing we were talking about is trust a matter of the head or the heart, or is it gut right? Like what is it? Like sometimes we meet people and we have a good feeling, we have a good connection, and there's some gut level we feel comfortable with them. Like I think it's an interesting thing, and so Michelle and I can we can kind of dabble in the woo woo, the mystical, if you will, and so you can start to think about things in an energetic level. You meet people and you have a good feeling about them. You feel good. You connect with them on a level that people read body language. Is that a real thing? Like, what are we using there to develop some level of trust?
Or you have just this gut feeling. It's like, I don't want to, and there's no story. There's no reason why. When there's people that you meet that it's like, there's just no reason why that you would distrust them. That actually kind of brings another little element, if that's okay.
Please.
Is that trust, when we're talking about trust with just in general, do we distrust because the entity, the business, the person has given us good cause to distrust them? Or do we distrust because they come from a group or a sector, or we've had bad experiences with other people like that, or whatever? So are we bringing in past experience and past fears of being, like, you lost my trust, and applying it to this? Now,
did you lose my trust, or are you in a group that has lost my trust?
It's,
or you appear to come from a group that has lost my trust.
Because if we lose trust in our customers because they're part of a group, we should not be doing buy here, pay here.
Amen. Right.
So, but I mean, it's like, that's how it kind of comes towards us. It's like, sorry, Steve. A lot of people are like, I don't trust attorneys. Okay. There's a lot of really great attorneys out there that are trustworthy, but obviously you've had experience or have had experience or have been exposed to other people's experiences with attorneys.
Sure.
LOL, you guys,
your gut
can be telling you no, even if underwriting is telling you yes. To me, that is the risk of the industry.
Yeah. And so let's invite Tyler on to talk about this subject one day. And the reason, for those who don't know Tyler in West Texas, he's, sitting in a sales manager chair.
He's also on the board in TIADA.
In Texas, he's about to be confirmed in July. So at their conference coming up in a week or two here. But that's part of the perspective that Tyler would bring. He's been the compliance designate in his operation and very much involved in underwriting. So it'll be an interesting one to talk about, these things, certainly in an underwriting context. But I think for us, I'm trying to keep trust on a broader level in terms of, what is that lens? Like, as you talked about that, it's like, what fear are we using
is your distrust based in fear?
Yeah. What lens are we using? What filters are we using? What is driving any level of distrust? Where is it coming from? And so I think we all think about that in terms of, and I think about in my own life experience, I've had people that, you ask them, they might say they don't trust me. Well, is that because of something real, or is it because of a miscommunication? Was my intention really to do something to cause me to be distrusted? So it's an interesting thing. We all kind of navigate that. We live with the idea that some people trust us, others don't. But I think it's an interesting thing to explore. And I think especially for Michelle and me, there's just so many angles and elements on this, because
really
again,
is.
The marketing piece for us is we're asking dealers to get more comfortable. I'll just say it. Dealers, we're asking you to stop selling used cars and start getting to the place where you can tell your story, let people get to know you, start selling yourself more. And when I say sell yourself, it's let people get to know you. If you're somebody who can be trusted as an asset in your community, we'll let people get to know you. So this is why trust factors in for us in the marketing track. It's how you go forward and tell your authentic story and connect with people and become known, liked, and trusted.
Well, and when you kind of think about, there's an element of when a loan's going along and the car breaks down and they don't reach out to you about the car having broken down, and then they end up repoing the car and going somewhere else. What was missing? What was missing was trust to talk to you and that a resolution would be found.
Mm-hmm.
They don't trust that a resolution can be found with this car or with this dealership. So they go somewhere else because they just don't trust that it's going to happen. So that's an element of trust that that as we move forward with our customers, that we learn to develop, or that we cultivate that level of trust. And it's through education, it's through there's and showing up when there is an issue, when there is a problem, showing up, being available. Let's work through this. We can work through this together. And that's how you cultivate trust with once they're in. I mean, you can cultivate trust to have them sign the dotted line, but how do you cultivate that trust so when there is a problem that they make a choice to talk to you?
Yeah. And so I think I want to introduce, because we had a fun conversation on Friday. We don't need to say who, but we enjoyed spending some time with a dealer who is a trusted member of their community. They're well known in their community. And I would say that, we had fun socializing this idea, because one of the things we are moving forward with White Hat Way is this idea of being able to go into a market and drive White Hat Way as the brand with I'll call it a partner dealer. And while we don't have to go out and say, this is a dealer you can trust, you can go out and say, this is a dealer who subscribes, this is a local business who subscribes to these White Hat practices. Here's what White Hat Way is about. And now you tell them, here's what White Hat Way is. And so you can imagine, if a consumer is seeing that, you could say, okay, I see what this dealer claims to stand for, right? They claim in their advertising to stand for this. Now, if I see other things, organic posts, if I meet them, a friend or my coworker goes down and meet them, is the experience consistent with what they have claimed to be, right? So our actions, we've all heard the thing about actions speak louder than words. In this case, we want the actions to match the words. And let's just make sure that, now we can help people understand, though. We can put a label on it, put an identity around it. Like, we're not saying, here's a dealer you can trust. The consumer will draw their own conclusion. We're just simply able to go forward and say, here's what this dealer subscribes to. They've adopted these practices. And so when you list those practices, you say, that sounds like somebody I can feel good about. Let me go talk to them and find out if they really operate that way, And so this is part of what I think you're going to see us continue to do with the White Hat Way brand. And so that's why we think it's also important as a brand. And I think it's why trust, you can easily see how trust is an anchor in all that. That for the consumer to buy into that, they've got to see that, oh, this dealer is genuine. They really mean that. Like, this stuff is truly important to them. And now it's like everything runs through that lens, all of it kind of, is filtered through that particular, thought process. And so it's like, it's a way for us to drive that forward. And so that's why trust, it just becomes a thread for us that I think is just so important for us to flesh out. Let's find out how dealers think about it. Let's find out how consumers think about it. And let's try to identify it, and let's talk about it. I think that's the main thing, is let's get comfortable talking about it and figuring out how do we become more trusted amongst our consumer base out there, And so this is where we're just going to use this platform to lead the conversation, like invite people to the conversation.
So one of the things we're going to be doing when we bring people in, and I don't think that as we bring people that are in the industry, out of the industry, business owners, entrepreneurs, people that are out there, working with customers, and, talking to them about, are you trusted with your consumer? And how did you build that trust?
Right.
And getting to, like, what did you do that helped build that trust? Because I think that there's going to be nuggets, regardless of whether or not it's in the industry, out of the industry. We're also going to be asking them, is there a business that you work with that you trust? And why do you trust them?
Right.
What is it that about that business arrangement that you trust them? And so it's kind of like the B2B and B2C. kind of thing. That's like, let's talk about how we develop trust and how we earn trust.
Yeah. And I think, we just did this big enterprise value event in March, and I'm thinking ahead to, it's one thing to trust the people, right? So you pick a company and say, I know the people, I trust the people. It's a different thing to be able to say, I trust the brand. Okay. So from an enterprise value standpoint, we're going to certainly be working to help our clients get to the place where people can trust your brand, whatever you stand for, that even when you're not in the building, right?
Well,
that
and
people trust the brand.
The thing that shows that when we talk to America's Car Mart, who they will buy dealerships, is how are they known? What's their connection with their customer, and what's their connection with their community?
Yeah.
That's what it all boils down to for them.
I wish I had it to share,
but what is their connection with their customer, and what is their connection with their community?
Yeah.
Outside of their customer, what is their connection with their community? That is about trust building.
Yeah. And we've talked about that a couple of times. We've had Steve Taylor with America's Car Mart on, and you can find that episode when we were at NIADA. We recorded one evening with Steve Taylor and Keith Hagler.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about that. I won't be able to find it quickly enough, but the back of their business card is very telling. It's amongst the words. I hope I'm quoting this right.
It's like a list of 3 or 4 things, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like, and so it's like, here's who we are. Like, this is, it's a quick thing about our mission, whatever. And amongst the things that are on there is compassion. Like, it's really a company with 100 and some odd locations and buy here, pay here. And their business card includes the limited amount of space. And you're going to choose the word compassion to represent your company. That's starting to get somewhere with, like, but is it really true? Now the question is, you visit the operation. I think based on our experience with America's Car Mart, they certainly live their culture. It starts from the top with them. They seem to live it and embody it. And so it's an interesting and beautiful thing. But, putting on your business card is like, this is who we are. This is who we strive to be every day. And it doesn't matter if you're a salesperson on the front line in a dealership in Kentucky, or you're, the CEO. It's like from the top to the bottom, you're trying to make sure that this is who we are. And so that's about becoming trusted. That's about becoming, trusted as what you and I call an asset to the community. And so it's just an interesting thing to explore in our used car industry is, how do people go about creating trust? For me, part of that is just making trust deposits, and you don't build it overnight. You got to earn it. So it's going to be, like I say, an ongoing conversation. We're going to be reaching out to people and bringing them to this truth about trust. Let's break down the real pieces of trust and how it can help us in the used car industry, and probably it'll help us in other parts of our life as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
Hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. Like I said, it's going to be kind of the first of many, season 1, episode 1, the truth about trust. And so it may be a few weeks before you see another one, but we're going to start bringing this to a real center point, to a focus on the conversation.
And today's episode, let's see, we're July 12th. Don't wait. If you're interested in that September event, get a message to me. You can find me on Facebook, whatever. Get a message to me. Let's talk. Thanks.
All right, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining. We'll talk to y'all later.